Rebecca Coriam seems to have hit the big time. In her early 20s, she's already working for one of the biggest companies around. And not only that, her workplace is a cruise ship. Rebecca travels back and forth between paradisiacal ports for work, looks after the children of passengers, and explores new countries on the side. But the supposed jackpot will end with the young woman's death. And to this day, no one knows what happened to her on board the cruise ship, because her employer, Disney Cruise, is withholding some information even years later. And the question is, why? Rebecca Coriam comes from Chester in Great Britain. She was born there in March 1987 and grew up sheltered. The Coriam family is very close. Her parents love Rebecca and her sister Rachel, as well as the 2 foster brothers they bring into their family. Even as the children grow up, they all stay in close contact with each other. This was also the case in 2010, when Rebecca started her professional life. She had just graduated with a degree in sports science. But Rebecca's greatest passion is probably working with children. Even as a teenager, Rebecca always enjoyed taking care of her 2 younger foster brothers. And in the summer of 2010, Rebecca came across a job offer that seemed to be made for her. Disney Cruise Lines offers its own cruises in the United States. And Disney was looking for entertainers for precisely that purpose. They are responsible for looking after the children of the passengers and accompanying them on various activities. It's the ideal job for Rebecca, who loves children and sports. What's more, Rebecca already has experience in dealing with leisure guests. The young woman has already worked at the zoo in her hometown and in a hotel. She also completed a 4-month sports camp in the United States. The job offer seems to be tailor-made for the 23-year-old. But the competition is fierce. There are hundreds of applicants for the position at Disney Cruise. In June 2010, Rebecca is actually invited to an interview. The appointment takes place in London. For the young Brit, the dream job is within reach. And Rebecca does well at the interview. So well, in fact, that she is accepted shortly afterwards. This is the chance of a lifetime for Rebecca. Although she has only just graduated, she is working for one of the largest companies in the world. What's more, she gets to spend her working hours with children, playing and moving around. And Rebecca works in a paradise setting. From the United States, Disney Cruises departs for some of the most popular vacation destinations in the world. Rebecca's big adventure begins soon after she accepts the job. Rebecca Coriam will spend 4 months in the U.S. state of Florida in 2010. There, she will receive training from Disney that will prepare her for her work on the cruise. Rebecca will then get off to a flying start at the end of 2010, accompanying several cruises between Florida and the Bahamas. The employment contracts for Disney Cruises are always for 4 months. Then there is a break of at least 2 months. The company is very happy with Rebecca and offers her new contracts after the first period of work. At the beginning of 2011, Rebecca returns to her native UK for 2 months. But she knows that she will be spending the spring on another Disney cruise. This time, however, Rebecca will not be on the usual route between Florida and the Bahamas. Instead, she will be deployed on the Disney Wonder. The cruise liner operates between Los Angeles and Mexico, and Disney has also hired her again for the summer, for the route between Alaska and Vancouver in Canada. However, Rebecca will no longer make this trip, because she will disappear forever on a trip between Los Angeles and Mexico. Where magic meets the sea. That is the slogan of Disney Cruises. And it is precisely under this motto that the Disney Wonder will set sail on March 21st, 2011. On its route, It will stop in Puerto Vallarta and Cabo San Lucas. The ship can accommodate 2,400 passengers and 945 crew members. Among them is Rebecca, who goes about her usual business on board. While the vacationers enjoy their cruise, the trip between LA and Mexico quickly becomes routine for the employees. Week after week, they travel the same route. Rebecca messages her parents on March 21st, 2011 via Facebook Messenger. Rebecca writes that she will call the next day. She reports into her parents at least once a week while she is at sea. She does this either by email or by phone. She was back home for a few days just a few weeks ago. Rebecca's grandfather had passed away. She traveled to England for 2 weeks in February to be with her family for the funeral. When Rebecca flew back to the US for work, she was doing relatively well under the circumstances. And when she contacted her parents via Facebook Messenger on that day in March, she seemed perfectly normal. But the next day, the Coriams waited in vain for a call from their daughter. When the phone finally rang, it was almost 11 p.m. in England. When an American number appears on the display, they answer anyway, assuming that Rebecca is finally getting in touch. But it is not Rebecca at the other end of the line, but another Disney Cruise Line employee. She informs the Coriam couple that Rebecca did not report for work that morning and has since disappeared without a trace. No one on board the Disney Wonder can find the young woman. And on a large cruise ship in the middle of the high seas, the first fear is, of course, a terrible one. Namely, that Rebecca may have gone overboard. Both the US and Mexican Coast Guard sent boats to search the Disney Wonder's route. While the sea was being combed, a search was also carried out for Rebecca on board the cruise ship. However, it is not the police who are searching, but Rebecca's colleagues. They are now trying to follow up Rebecca's last traces, and these are more than puzzling. Rebecca should have started her shift at 9 a.m. Pacific time, but she is not in her staff cabin. Even when she is called over the ship's loudspeaker, she does not answer. And this despite the fact that Rebecca had already been on the ship early that morning. Surveillance camera footage shows her on deck 1 at 5:45 a.m. Rebecca is on the phone in one of the staff areas. She appears stressed or tense on the recording. She's not using her private cell phone, but one of the onboard phones. These are used by the crew members for internal communications. It is unusual for Rebecca to be up so early. In fact, it is still 3 hours before her official shift begins. While Rebecca is on the phone, a young man approaches her and asks if everything is all right. Rebecca turns to him, still holding the phone to her ear. She can be seen saying the words, "Yes, everything's fine." Then Rebecca hangs up the phone and the conversation is over. She leaves the staff area and is never seen again. The ship Disney Wonder is registered in the Bahamas, and that is why the responsibility for the investigative work in the case of Rebecca Coriam lies with the Caribbean island. The Bahamas provided a single detective to clarify the circumstances of Rebecca's disappearance. It was only 3 days after Rebecca's disappearance that this detective went on board the Disney Wonder. The ship had already returned to Los Angeles when he went on board to look for clues. The police officer is said to have told Rebecca's parents that he only spent 1 day on the ship. He is said to have questioned a few of the crew members, but not all of them, and not a single passenger. The Disney Wonder set sail again the same day. New passengers who wanted to spend their vacation on the Disney cruise boarded the ship. There was no time for a proper investigation on board with such a tight schedule. Rebecca's parents are also allowed on board the Disney Wonder to see for themselves and to take Rebecca's personal belongings. When the ship arrives in Los Angeles on March 25th, the two of them are there. The Coriams are driven directly to the Disney Wonder in a car with darkened windows provided by Disney. Anne and Mike Coriam later recount the following. "We were given cakes and then taken to the captain, who sat down with us and told us that he believed our daughter had gone on deck 5 and a wave had hit the ship and taken her away. The Coriams were even shown the spot where Rebecca was allegedly pulled overboard. Disney laid flowers there. A pair of flip-flops that had been left behind were found at the corresponding spot. Disney deduced that these shoes belonged to Rebecca and were left behind when the young woman was probably swept away by a wave. In fact, this theory is based solely on the discovery of the shoes. However, the flip-flops do not match Rebecca's style at all and are too big for her. Furthermore, the flip-flops are marked with a different name on the side. Mike and Anne are then supposed to collect their daughter's belongings from Rebecca's cabin and take them with them. There they find another pair of flip-flops lying on top of Rebecca's suitcase in her wardrobe. But actually, these can't belong to Rebecca either because they are too small. When the Coriams ask the crew members, they shrug their shoulders and say that they have never seen these flip-flops. Unfortunately, it is not clear from the sources whether it was possible to find out who these shoes belong to. The Coriams also meet a young woman, the one with whom Rebecca spoke on the phone shortly before she disappeared. However, no further information comes out of this. 2 months after Rebecca's disappearance, in May 2011, her credit card was used. It is not publicly known where or for what. Rebecca's mother receives an email from Rebecca's bank notifying her of the card use. For Rebecca's parents, the account activity is, of course, a cause for hope. So is an email they receive a year after their daughter's disappearance. A witness writes that she saw Rebecca in Venice, accompanied by a dark-haired man. She's 85% sure that the woman was Rebecca. However, Rebecca's passport was given to her parents when they picked up her personal belongings, and Rebecca would not have been able to enter Italy from the United States without an ID. After that, there are no further sightings that would place the missing girl there. The Coriams are in contact with the investigator from the Bahamas. Rebecca's parents find it difficult to understand that after their daughter's disappearance, it seems as if everyone has immediately returned to business as usual. They not only have the feeling that the investigation is being neglected, but rather that there is no real investigation at all. They learn of surveillance footage that apparently needed to be enhanced and sent to the FBI. However, Mike and Anne never hear from the FBI again about these images and have no information about what was supposed to be seen on them. According to articles published at the time of Rebecca's disappearance, Disney claims not to have any footage of Rebecca going overboard. At the same time, they are not willing to disclose the video files or the locations of the cameras, for security and privacy reasons. After 9 months, the investigator in charge will conclude that Rebecca's disappearance is not suspicious. The investigation will then be closed. 1 year after Rebecca's disappearance, an investigative British journalist takes a trip on the Disney Wonder. He wants to take a look around and solve the mystery of Rebecca's disappearance. He also talks to some employees. One of them tells him the following: Disney knows exactly what happened. The phone call she made was recorded. Everything here is recorded. There are surveillance cameras everywhere. Disney has the tape. Six years after Rebecca's disappearance, a woman named Tracy Medley goes public. She works on board the Disney Wonder, just like Rebecca, and she provides new information that sheds a different light on Rebecca's disappearance. Tracy reports that she and the missing Rebecca were much more than just colleagues. The two were in a relationship with each other. Tracy describes herself at the time as wild. She had not yet become aware of her sexuality and was experimenting a lot. She actually had a steady boyfriend named Devin at the time, but with her colleague Rebecca, she had something she hadn't had before. Rebecca is the first woman Tracy falls in love with and helps her to understand and get to know her sexuality. The two women enter into a relationship with each other. Devin, the man Tracy was actually dating, also works for the Disney cruise. And on March 17, 2011, Rebecca sees Tracy and Devin getting intimate again. Tracy says about that evening, "She knew I went into his room. She said she was in love with me, and she thought I wasn't in love with her, that I was just playing with her. She said she wanted to leave the ship." Days later, Rebecca and Tracy had another fight. Tracy reports, "It took all 4 of us to calm her down. She woke me up that night and said she was angry at herself for trying to jump off the ship, but she was too weak. I was so scared. I told her she was crazy. It was too much. The next evening, March 21st, Rebecca, Tracy, and Devin had a drink together. Afterwards, the three of them had sex. Rebecca initiated the whole thing. This is also consistent with another witness statement. A security employee of the ship told the police that Rebecca had had sex with another male crew member in front of Tracy. This could have been Devin. Rebecca, however, was not at all comfortable with this. The security officer suspects that Rebecca had no previous sexual experience with men. She may have been put in the situation by the pressure of Tracy and the other male crew member, without really wanting to. Tracy says that after sex, Rebecca took a shower and then set off for a walk on board. Tracy didn't want to go with her because it was so late. It was about 5:40 a.m. Tracy and Devin fell asleep. It wasn't until the next morning that they noticed Rebecca hadn't come back. Shortly thereafter, her disappearance was announced on board. Tracy insists that she told the investigator from the Bahamas all of this. She says that she was never questioned about the matter by any other police officers. She does not believe Disney's theory that she had an accident, because there is a lot of evidence to the contrary. When Mike and Ann Coriam visit the ship after Rebecca's disappearance, they are told that their daughter died in a tragic accident. Rebecca's friend at the time, Tracy, says in an interview, "Disney said a wave pushed her off the ship. I think that's nonsense." In fact, the question arises as to how Rebecca could have been washed overboard at all. No unusual waves were reported in the sea area on the night of her disappearance. The water was relatively calm, and the railing of Deck 5, where Rebecca was allegedly washed away, is more than 1.80 meters high. The deck itself is about 27 meters high, so the deadly wave would have had to be extremely large and powerful. A wave like that would certainly have been noticed. Rebecca was last seen at 5:45 in the morning, but even at that time of day, staff are already on the move on the Disney Wonder. Whichever way you look at it, the version that Disney is spreading about the death of its employees seems to be the least likely. Then, of course, there is the sad possibility that Rebecca may have chosen to take her own life. Rebecca's family does not believe that. For the relatives, this possibility is out of the question, partly because Rebecca had arranged to call them that same day. However, one must also bear in mind that a lot was going on in Rebecca's life shortly before her disappearance. The great distance to her family, the exhausting job, the death of her grandfather in February 2011, and the turbulent love triangle with Tracy and Devin. Colleagues remember Rebecca as a very happy and energetic person, but with a deep sadness. The night before she disappeared, Rebecca drank alcohol. How much is not known. It may have been enough, coupled with her heavy thoughts, to lead her to a momentous decision. Many people find the behavior of Rebecca's employer Disney strange. By withholding information and insisting that it was an accident, the company appears to be hiding something. Perhaps even that there was a murderer on board the Disney Wonder in March 2011. Others even believe that Rebecca Coriam's disappearance was the result of human trafficking. It is repeatedly brought up that cruise ships are the ideal breeding ground for crimes of all kinds. But with the high security measures on board the Disney Wonder, only very hardened criminals would have been at work. There were also no witnesses who noticed any signs of a crime. No suspicious observations, no screams, no signs of a fight, nothing. In fact, there is no hard evidence in the case of Rebecca Coriam's disappearance. Instead, there is only great uncertainty. A private investigator hired by Rebecca's parents says he is definitely convinced that something criminal has happened to Rebecca. Private investigator Bill Anderson does not disclose the exact reasons for this to the media. He further criticizes the fact that the Coriams were never allowed to read police reports on their daughter's disappearance. In 2014, Rebecca's parents even sue Disney. They accuse Disney of violating its duty of care as an employer. 3 years later, the Coriams and Disney settle out of court, so the case is dropped. More than 10 years after Rebecca's disappearance, there are still many unanswered questions. Not only about her actual disappearance, but also about the dubious investigation. Why, for example, were only so few passengers and crew members interviewed? Tracy claims that they were never questioned by the police, only by Disney. Why wasn't surveillance camera footage made available to the relatives at least? Why does the company insist on calling it an accident when there is no evidence to support that? The answer to this question is probably as simple as it is painful for Rebecca's family. Disney sells the big dream of an ideal life, of lightheartedness, bright children's eyes, and innocent happiness. Whatever may have happened to Rebecca in the end, whether she chose to die or was possibly murdered, the case clashes with this image. A colleague of Rebecca's says in an interview, "They're trying to protect the brand. If it was 6 a.m. and they were doing their job and watching the decks, someone must have seen her go overboard. Or if they didn't, they're not covering up why. Bex made hundreds of people happy. The passengers loved her. They all loved her. You'd think Disney would give something back. They owe it to her to find out what happened." What do you think happened to Rebecca Coriam? And why might Disney be keeping quiet about it? Do you really think it's just that they don't want to tarnish their image? I'm curious to hear your theories. Just drop me a comment. This way you also support the channel. Because the more interactions there are, the higher the probability that the video will be suggested to people who have not yet subscribed to Insolito. Otherwise, thank you for watching and all your support. I wish you a good morning, noon, or evening, or whenever you watch the video, and hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, ciao guys.